If you're enjoying the stories of the past and the legends that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode from Echoes of Empire. In the cold twilight of 12th century England, as frost clung to the empty fields and wolves prowled near the edges of forgotten hamlets, a kingdom descended into chaos. The death of King Henry I, last of the conqueror's sons, opened a vacuum that would swallow the land for nearly 2 decades. Chroniclers would come to call this time the Anarchy, a period where law broke down, rival armies marched across the countryside, and loyalties shifted like the tides along the English coast. It is remembered as a war between two great names, Stephen of Blois and Empress Matilda, but behind the battle lines and the royal claims stood a host of lesser-known figures, nobles whose stories rarely grace the pages of surviving accounts. These hidden supporters of Matilda shaped the conflict as surely as any crowned ruler. Their influence, scattered through fragments of charters, letters and local lore, reveals a deeper and more complex struggle than the chronicles admit. The roots of the crisis lie in the ambitions and tragedies of the ruling house. Henry I, stern and calculating, had spent decades strengthening the English monarchy. His only legitimate son, Prince William, was groomed to rule both England and Normandy, but fate intervened in the icy waters of the Channel in 1120, when the white ship sank with the young prince on board. Henry, left without a male heir, named his daughter Matilda as his successor. She had been married to the Holy Roman Emperor Henry V, gaining the prestigious title of Empress. After his death, she wed Geoffrey of Anjou, forging a fragile but necessary alliance between the Normans and the House of Anjou. The English barons swore fealty to her, yet when Henry died in 1135, ambition, fear, and opportunism unraveled the oaths. Stephen of Blois, Henry's nephew, raced across the Channel and seized the throne, claiming the support of powerful nobles and the church. Matilda's claim, upheld by legitimacy, but weakened by politics, ignited the conflict that followed. The chronicles focus on the grand figures. They describe Stephen's early charm and later desperation, Matilda's determination and occasional ruthlessness, the shifting loyalties of the magnates, and the suffering of the common people. But woven into the margins of this story were men and women who chose to support Matilda, in defiance of Stephen's power. They came from both great houses and obscure manors. Their motivations ranged from loyalty to Henry's memory, to ambition, grievances, or a belief in rightful succession. Their names appear fleetingly, as witnesses on surviving charters, as commanders in minor skirmishes, or as local patrons who sheltered Matilda's envoys. These are the lost nobles whose quiet actions kept her cause alive during its darkest moments. One of the most shadowed of these figures is Miles of Gloucester, a man who rose from relative obscurity to become one of Matilda's staunchest supporters. Although later rewarded with the earldom of Hereford, his early career shows a loyal and cunning administrator under Henry I. When Stephen seized the throne, Miles hesitated. His lands lay in a region where allegiance to the new king seemed almost inevitable. Yet as Stephen's rule faltered, and Matilda landed in England to press her claim, Miles shifted decisively. His castles, positioned in the Severn Valley, became vital strongholds. The chroniclers praise his military skill, but what they miss is the network of knights and minor nobles who followed him. Local lords like Walter of Worcester, a name nearly absent from surviving records, provided troops and supplies. Others, such as the lesser-known Hugh de Lacy, offered fortified manors and intelligence on Stephen's movements. These men acted at great personal risk. If Stephen prevailed, they would be stripped of lands, titles, and possibly their lives. Yet their loyalty helped stabilize Matilda's foothold in the west. A similar network emerged in the north around the enigmatic figure of William Fitz-Duncan, a noble whose lineage tied him to both Scotland and the ancient House of Moray. While not openly proclaiming for Matilda, he opposed Stephen's supporters in the region, indirectly aiding her cause. Local Gaelic nobles and Anglo-Norman families, along the northern frontier, provided him shelter, horses and warriors. Their names survive in local traditions, rather than royal records. Men like Aelred of Gospatric's line, or the little documented Osbert of Allordale, supported efforts to push back Stephen's influence in the north. Though their actions were rarely coordinated with Matilda's central command, they created pockets of instability that undermined Stephen's attempts to consolidate power across the whole kingdom. One of the most fascinating yet overlooked networks operated within London itself, a city teeming with merchants, guild leaders, and minor nobles whose loyalties shifted in step with trade pressures and local rivalries. When Matilda entered London in 1141, after Stephen's capture at Lincoln, the chroniclers described the city welcoming her, but within days, the mood turned, forcing her to flee. Beneath this dramatic reversal lay the work of individuals who attempted to secure her position. Some were members of the merchant elite, who had benefited under Henry I, and believed Matilda would restore stability. Others were minor nobles whose urban residences served as meeting points for her envoys. Their letters do not survive, nor do the minutes of their secret gatherings, yet references in later accounts hint at their efforts. Figures like Robert of Uxbridge and Geoffrey the Goldsmith appear in civic documents from the period, showing sudden shifts in wealth and property, likely tied to their quiet involvement in Matilda's cause. Their failure to maintain London's support was not for lack of effort, but due to the complex web of rival interests that defined the city. Beyond the cities and major fortresses lay another group of forgotten nobles, those who controlled the rural shires and borderlands. These men held modest estates comparatively, but their castles and fortified manors offered essential safe havens. When Matilda moved across England from Bristol to Oxford to Winchester, she relied on a chain of supporters whose names echo faintly through property records and local manuscripts. Among them was the little-known Baron Adam of Lydiard, whose manor offered shelter to Matilda's messengers. Another was the obscure Sir Ranulph of Selwood, a knight whose family later preserved stories of hiding Matilda's treasury for months during one of Stephen's offensives. Their contributions were small in isolation, but vital in aggregate. The war was not a single great struggle, but a chain of countless small acts that shaped its direction. One must also consider the women who supported Matilda, many of whom were never chronicled at all. Noble women managed estates in their husbands' absence, directed the allocation of supplies, and maintained secret lines of communication. Some even defended castles. There is evidence that Maud of Wallingford, an heiress with ties to families loyal to the Empress, coordinated intelligence and shipments of food to besieged strongholds. Her role is mentioned only in a marginal note in a later manuscript, yet it reveals how deeply Matilda's claim reached into the fabric of noble society. Further south, the unnamed wife of a knight in Berkshire preserved Matilda's seal matrix for nearly a year, hiding it behind a chapel altar. Without such acts, Matilda's authority would have been impossible to maintain. Medieval politics depended not just on armies, but also on symbols, communications, and the silent cooperation of individuals whose stories remain largely lost. As the war dragged on, the fortunes of both sides rose and fell unpredictably. In 1141, Matilda achieved her greatest triumph when Stephen was captured at the Battle of Lincoln. For a moment, her victory seemed assured. She took the title of Lady of the English, and held the king in custody. But political skill was never enough in a kingdom fractured by rival loyalties. Her strict demands for money from London alienated the merchants. Her attempt to impose her authority on Winchester ended with the intervention of Stephen's formidable queen, Matilda of Boulogne, and the city turned into a battleground. Through these reversals, her hidden network of nobles struggled to keep her cause afloat. Miles of Gloucester fought bitterly to secure her retreat from Winchester. Local lords opened their gates, or provided horses for her escape. One anonymous supporter, recorded only as the squire of Micheldever, guided her through back roads during her flight, a detail preserved in a monastic chronicle that otherwise offers little sympathy for her cause. The war took an even darker turn, as both sides resorted to ravaging the countryside. Castles were built in great numbers, many of them small fortifications erected by minor nobles. Some were used for banditry and extortion, contributing to the chronicler's lament that Christ and his saints slept. Yet even amid this brutality, Matilda's lesser-known supporters tried to maintain discipline and stability within the territories their forces controlled. Records from Gloucestershire, show attempts by local lords loyal to Matilda to enforce fair treatment of villagers. Though these efforts were limited and often overwhelmed by larger events, they reveal a truth that the chronicles obscure. The war was not simply a clash of two claimants, but also a struggle among hundreds of nobles of varying rank, each navigating local responsibilities and personal loyalties. One of the most enduring mysteries of the period concerns the fate of Matilda's lost nobles after the war. Some, like Miles of Gloucester, died in the field, struck down by chance or misfortune. Others faded into obscurity after the eventual compromise that placed Matilda's son, the future Henry II, as heir to the throne. Many of the lesser nobles returned to their estates, their loyalty never rewarded, their sacrifices unrecorded. The charters of Henry II mention grants to well-known supporters, but the small landholders, the knights and minor barons, who risked everything for Matilda, rarely appear. Their role became a footnote in a larger narrative that celebrated the restoration of royal power under Henry and the renewed stability of the Plantagenet dynasty, yet their absence from records does not diminish their importance. Without these lost nobles, Matilda's claim would have collapsed in its earliest days. Their willingness to shelter her family, fund her armies, and defy Stephen's appointed sheriffs kept her struggle alive long enough for her son to inherit the legacy she fought for. Their actions reveal a deeper truth about medieval England. Power flowed not only through kings and earls, but through dense networks of local allegiances. The great magnates determined the course of battles, but the lesser nobility sustained the machinery of war. They provided manpower, logistics, intelligence, and the continuity of government in regions cut off from royal authority. The story of these nobles also illustrates the precarious nature of loyalty in an age where political legitimacy was constantly contested. Many of Matilda's supporters had sworn oaths to Stephen under duress or political necessity. When they shifted their allegiance to her, they risked punishment as traitors. Their decisions were informed not just by ambition, but by personal memory, grievances, and family ties that stretched back generations. In some cases, they supported her because they had served her father, Henry I, loyally, and felt bound by their previous oaths. In other cases, they opposed Stephen because his rapid seizure of the throne disrupted local balances of power. Their motivations were diverse, but together they created a network strong enough to resist Stephen's early attempts at consolidating his reign. Perhaps most striking is how these lost nobles shaped the eventual outcome of the conflict. By supporting Matilda during the darkest years, they preserved the legitimacy of her line long enough for her son Henry Fitz-Empress to mature and enter the political arena. When he did, the foundations laid by these nobles proved crucial. Henry possessed the advantages his mother lacked: youth, martial charisma, and the alliance of Normandy and Anjou, but he also inherited the loyalty of families who had risked everything for Matilda. Their support enabled him to negotiate the Treaty of Winchester in 1153, ending the Civil War and confirming him as Stephen's heir. Thus the hidden nobles who supported Matilda, though rarely mentioned, were instrumental in preserving the Plantagenet claim that would dominate English history for centuries. Their legacy remains scattered across England in the ruins of small castles, the pages of dusty charters, and the echoes of local folklore. Some manors that changed hands during the war retained oral traditions of secret loyalties. In parts of Hampshire, tales survive of noble families who hid Matilda during her flight from Oxford, though the details have blurred with time. In Gloucestershire, references in medieval legal disputes hint at land grants made quietly in return for wartime support. These fragments, when pieced together, form a mosaic that enriches our understanding of the Anarchy. To tell the story of the Anarchy without acknowledging these hidden figures is to miss the full complexity of the era. The war was not simply a contest between Stephen and Matilda. It was a struggle fought in the halls of manors, on the ramparts of small fortresses, in the chambers of urban guilds, and in the secret councils of minor nobles, whose names are lost to history. They shaped the trajectory of the conflict, not through grand gestures, but through countless acts of loyalty, courage, calculation, and sacrifice. Their contributions provide a more human dimension to the political narratives recorded by monastic chroniclers, who often wrote with the biases of their patrons. In the end, The story of Empress Matilda's lost nobles is not merely a footnote to the rise of the Plantagenets. It is a testament to how the fate of a kingdom can hinge upon the actions of individuals who stand outside the spotlight of history. Their loyalty sustained a cause that would shape the future of England. Their sacrifices helped lay the foundation for the rule of Henry II, whose reign marked the beginning of a new political order. And their memory, though faint, endures in the quiet corners of the English landscape, waiting for those who look beyond the chronicles to hear their story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new episode from Echoes of Empire.